Hey traders, this is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group with your end of day recap for Monday, March 5th. And a nice day overall for the indices. S&P finished up 1%. We had the Qs finished up 1% and a little bit over 1%, I should say. And small caps just a touch under that, up about 90 basis points. And really a nice reversal from the lows. If you remember, we came in this morning, the overnight session, there was a little bit of volatility in the Hang Seng market was down quite a bit, as well as Japan. So we started down on the day. So all in all, really nice range from the lows to the highs today. And it took about a half hour, 45 minutes for things to get going. Uh, if you saw my video from the weekend, it talked about a couple different things. Number one, there's been a lot of strength in the tech space, not just your names like FANG stocks, which have certainly been the FANG stocks have certainly been strong, your Netflix and your Amazon, but also the enterprise software names. So we're going to go into those. That's really been, I think, where the hidden strength has been in this market. And then on Friday, notice that finally another group started to participate. Biotechs joined the party on Friday, and they had some nice follow-through activity. So a couple of the takeaways, so that was the one observation that we mentioned in the weekend video was that the higher growth names have really been leading and doing a great job, and that's been I think a good thing considering the chop that we've had and the higher volatility that we've had in the last couple of weeks. It's good to see those higher growth names lead, so I view that as a positive. But I said a couple things I wanted to see take place because we have seen besides the biotech participating on Friday, there's been a lot of sectors that have been breaking down. So what the conclusion that I made was I really want to see a couple other boxes checked in terms of other equities participating, not just in the U.S. but globally. So what did we see out of the Dax today? Really strong performance, and I think that really kind of queued things up for U.S. markets. The Dax, which if I bring over here, I think the biggest day since. And again, a lot of folks just seem to kind of look at the U.S. and they don't look, they don't tend to look at global markets. But you need Europe, and you need some of these other areas of the markets to participate. It can't just be all about the U.S. The U.S. is not going to just go up, all by itself. So you could see Euro stocks were up 90 basis points. And just moving over to the DAX, and you can see Europe was up it finished up 1.5%. So that's really good. If you look at this DAX chart, it's been very ugly. So I think that really helped things along, and I'll actually switch this to the U.S. But you could see it's been underneath the 200-day. It's still underneath the 200-day moving average. So it still has to have a little bit more follow through. Same thing with Japan with the Nikkei, which broke the 200-day moving average. So these things need to come back a bit. I really think that you need more than just participation out of the U.S. It's you can't have other areas, especially big economies around the globe, break down and just have the U.S. go up. That's not going to work. So that was very good today to see that up 1.5%, and you could see, just as I said, the biggest up day since all the way back on in the beginning of February. So basically about a month, and you could see that volatility in the last couple days of the week really drag down things globally. All right, and then the other thing was I wanted to see some other sectors besides tech participate today. So there was a few. You had energy names outperform. They were up. XOP was up 1.8%. OIH up 1.6%. And what's interesting is kind of look at the chart of crude here. And you can see it was up 2.2% today. And I don't really have an explanation for this as we wait for the crude chart to come up, but it looks very similar to me as the S&P chart. Not exact. We'll go back to the S&P chart for a second, and then I have the two on one screen, which I'll show you in a second, but they kind of seem like they're following one another. And maybe it's just a case of just risk, global risk, but you can see this is a one-year chart. If I go in for 6 months, you can see how these have been really tracking each other. The orange line is crude, and the candlestick chart is the S&P. So it seems like, it's just kind of it kind of just shows an appetite for risk. to me. But we'll keep an eye on this relationship. I mentioned this I picked up on this last week. In the morning, I usually go over commodities as well as where S&P futures are, and I said, hey, wait a minute, this kind of looks really. As I was flipping back and forth between charts, I noticed the relationship. So again, something to keep an eye on. So what did we have today in terms of option activity? And I'll get into some individual names that were also on the radar today that worked really well in the trading room. But it kind of felt a lot like last Monday. If you remember last Monday, we had a really nice start to the week. We had follow through from the Friday before. Remember, just Friday we had a nice day in the markets. Really came back from the lows. So not exact, but we'll see. I still think you kind of need to take things one day at a time. So we are just right around the open from where we were on Thursday. We did not get over that, but maybe if you look at SPY, it might be different depending on how you look at it. I guess if you're, the SPY chart will, if instead of, so you could cheat a little bit. Instead of looking at S&P futures, if you want to look at the SPY chart, you can maybe feel a little bit more comforted by that, and you could see, if I can get the Thinkorswim to cooperate here for a minute. You could see that the close was above Friday's open, which I view as a positive. So again, don't look at S&P futures, look at the SPY chart, and I think that'll look better to you. Okay, so obviously some really big outperformance out of the FANG stocks. This is the U.S. Internet ETF. This is something that I got long, and I've been long since it recaptured the 50-day moving average. So nice to see this. Netflix has been absolutely, we caught a lot of the flow last week in Netflix option activity, aggressive call buying, which really gave a pretty good signal that something was going on in Netflix. And sure enough, up and away, up another 4.6%, duplicating Friday's performance, which was really, really nice. And even, Amazon was on the radar as well. Today, Amazon, which I had in the newsletter from this weekend, up 1.6%. Again, started the day, was a little bit weak during the day, but kind of really gave you an opportunity to buy the weakness today and profit pretty well. We played, Twitter was a big name in the trading room today. Twitter was up 4.8%. If you kind of zoom out, this set up just a really nice. A really nice chart setup that we took advantage today. Friday we got a little bit above this triangle pattern, and up and we went. A couple other names that really, sticking with the enterprise software, certainly Vive gave us some cues about what happens in this group when you turn in really good earnings and have been consolidating for a while. This thing's still up again, up another 4.4%. Since this thing broke out at 62 bucks, it's at 77. So I kind of took note of this, and I structured a position around NTNX. NTNX had kind of similar good results, not exactly the same company, but small cap tech, and this thing was up 8% today. So a real nice move today. And I had some calls going into the NTNX earnings report, and I flipped them. I rolled them up to a different strike. I think to the 40 strike. Huge winner. Nice move. And we just are continuing to see names like this. I mean, Square was another name that took a little while to get going from earnings, but I think there was a story about them possibly getting into enabling more Bitcoin technology. There was also a story about PayPal with the same thing today. PayPal really didn't get going, even though we saw a little bit of call buying in that one. The option X. So those are just a couple names where we provided in the weekend newsletter and in our swing trade setup channel. You could see I mentioned this weekend. I mentioned NTNX and just exactly what I was up to. In this particular position, I talked about biotech. Biotech, again, I think not really getting too much attention, but was up another 1.5% today and outperforming, reclaim that 50-day moving average, possibly firing off a MACD buy signal maybe tomorrow. That would be really nice if it gets outside of this value area as well. So we talked about that in the weekend newsletter. And again, talked about the FANG stocks. This is the a good ETF to track for that enterprise software It also has a little bit of crossover between like your XLK ETF, but really just a lot. This is the North America Tech and Software ETF, and just another tech area that made 52-week highs. And you could see it's mostly a different group of stocks. If you look at IGV and what outperformed today, if you look at the best performers, you could see it's names like Proofpoint, right? It's names like Pega, Data, which saw a real nice call buyer today that I participated in today. Autodesk also in there, FireEye in there. If you drill in a little bit further, you can see that ATBI is in here as well. I think that also performed pretty well today, up 1.5%. Snaps in here, Workday is in here. So a lot of, I would say maybe second tier tech names that are performing really, really well. But the reason why I bring this up, it's not just FANG in tech that's doing it. It's a lot of the smaller cap names. So I think you would be a little misled to think that it's just the FANG names that are doing this. So what did we see in terms of call buy? Well, I mentioned Data. I think that was one of the best signals of the day. Really aggressive trade that went up. I took this trade even though it was a lot of premium in this particular trade. So wait for trade alert to come up here. You can see 3,000 April 85 calls. This was a nice looking trade, $984,000 of premium. And we saw, just sticking with that group, we saw Salesforce calls again. This name has just been hit so many times after they reported earnings. So someone's still looking for this, even though it was only up 0.5% today. It still looks like somebody wants this thing to go much higher, as there's been repeat call activity in this name. Microsoft, this was a trade that I also took today. It just seemed like a really nice setup. I think it was down on the day in the morning when we saw the call buying. It still needs to do some work here. It needs to get above value. But from where it was this morning and where it was last week, and last week was at $96 on the highs, today at $93. So it just seemed like a nice setup to take in this one. Intel, I would say, another great looking trade in Intel. This is a name that we've been seeing call buying, just another one, repeat call activity, and a nice block of, so I think it was 2 blocks that made up 10,000 shares in Intel. That was the biggest trade of the day. 6,000 May 50 calls, as well as 4,000 of the May 50 calls going up for 213. So again, look at the size of these trades, $2 million of option premium. So it really feels like there's being a lot of money being put to work, and still in a lot of different places in technology. So there's certainly a lot of different groups with technology. So including the semiconductors. And then how can I leave out Micron? This has been another huge winner in the trading room. I got into this trade, or I think I was already in it, and I doubled my position down here, and I've been taking profits all along the way. I think on this particular day where we had a little bit of red, I think on Friday morning I added to my position on Friday morning, which was a hell of a little trade that I did there. So I took a little bit more profits, but 52-week high. I mean, this is what an awesome move. And again, call buyers every step of the way. More call buyers coming in today to the name. Just absolutely unbelievable in Micron. A few other names to go through. I know I'm talking about a lot of tech names, but PayPal saw some calls. Cisco saw some calls. 8, which is a smaller telecom name, saw some calls. I mentioned Square already, which saw some calls in the beginning of the day. Tiny bit of Facebook calls as well. Just to get away from the space a little bit, there was some weekly calls that went up in ADM. AXTA, which I'm not sure if I have on my recap. But by the way, there was more Vive calls today, a little bit of QD calls today as well. So let me just get away from tech just for a little bit. There was a little bit of, before I do that, there's a little bit of Texas Instruments as well as Splunk calls as well. Okay, so now I'll turn away. But you could see just flooded with trades. And very similar to what we saw, like I said, the price action, very similar to what we saw a week ago. Notice all the way back on 226, it was the same type of option activity where I had to actually use 2 pages to get all the names. I think it was a little bit more diverse that we saw last Monday in terms of other sectors, but still the same type of quantity of risk taking. So again, I think you just have to take things one day at a time, as we know what happened last Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. It was pretty ugly. Granted, we had a lot more events that were taking place. So it might be a little bit. Hopefully, it's a lot different this week without the Powell and without all those events that we had last week. I would say another good looking trade today was Wynn. This is the hotel. Another hotel names. Some of these hotel names have been really good on option activity. Take a look at what they did here. I don't think they. Maybe they. I was gonna say maybe they rolled, but these went up right at the end of the day. Looks like they sold at. This is puts and calls. Maybe they got out of for April, but this was the trade that went up earlier. It was the August 115s. Again, look at the size of these trades. These are really some nice chunky looking trades. This was 1.6 million dollars on this 1900 of the August 115 calls. And again, they're giving plenty of time for this trade. So if you are interested in a little bit more swing trade, this chart doesn't look like it's it's blown out to the upside. It looks like a nice dip buy. And you've got your support of the bottom of value, which is 115.63. So I took this trade. I didn't want to do this exact August 115 calls, so I did not send this out to members. It's in the trading. It's a trading room position, but I just did not want to take a big position in the 115s. I was looking at the August 120s, but they were too wide. So what I did was I bought a little bit of the August 115s, and then I bought. I think it was the let me just look at my positions. I did the May 120s, which I think were a little bit more affordable. So I'm in the May 120s and the August 115s in Wyndham. And if you remember, if you've been a member of the room for a while, you know that these hotel names have been really good on option activity. So I like this trade in here. And again, something a little bit different because I don't want to load up completely just on one sector, right? I mean, I think that's a little bit dangerous. All right, so that's I think we covered enough subjects. I'll be watching, of course, what the Asian markets do. They've been weak. They need to. That would be another box to check in terms of a positive. I mentioned other sectors need to participate a little bit. It's not that they need to lead. We just need to see a little bit confirmation that some of these other areas aren't going to fall apart. So that was the one box checks. The second one was Europe rallying a little bit. That European markets did that today. The next box to check in terms of like having a healthy market is to see some of these Asia areas that have been underperforming. We need to see them rally a little bit too, and then I get a lot more comfortable about the market. Last note, VIX. That was a great signal as well today. We've been using that quite a bit. It kind of hung around the 20 handle for a while today, and it broke lower and really sold off pretty hard all the way down to 18. So again, we're making more and more progress. The signal for this was on Friday once we ducked under the 200 period moving average. That was a great trend change. So really good price action and some nice progress, I would say, all around in multiple areas today. All right, so that's the end of the video. Have a great night and see you tomorrow back in the trading room.